We have new details on the proposed college football playoff that would expand to 14 teams, and I think this is a very bad idea. Listen, I'm all down for 14. Personally, why not go to 16? But hey, it is what it is, right? We're talking about going to 14 teams, where the Big Ten and the SEC would each get 3 automatic qualifiers. The ACC and the Big 12 would each get 2 automatic qualifiers. You'd have 1 spot for the G5, 3 spots for the at-large. I think this is a terrible idea. I think it limits access to the national championship of college football. I think it pushes out the common fan. It really puts the emphasis and the onus on the blue bloods. Jake, I just don't think this is about reach for all and giving everybody a chance to win a national championship.
And to that end, I say, of course not. Of course it's not, right? Like, it's never been. I think, like, so on one hand, we've been saying for years, say the SEC and the Big Ten have dominated the college football playoff, and it's basically been them and everybody else. But then when the SEC and the Big Ten want more automatic qualifiers, we're like, man, we're really limiting access. And it's like, well, we can't really have it both ways, right? So if we're going to allow the SEC and the Big Ten to dominate this thing the way they have up until this point, we can't really be surprised that they're asking for more automatic qualifiers. And I think I agree. Like, yeah, if you're going to go 3 and 3 out of each of these conferences, of course it limits access. Of course it makes it so that, you know, we're not going to get the one-off year where, you know, 4 Big 12 teams are in the college football playoff. That's not what they want. They want SEC and Big Ten competing and playing a lot of football against each other when it matters most. And so, yeah, I understand why these 2 conferences want this set up, but I'm inclined to agree. I'm not sure that this is great for college football. I think what's great for college football is making sure every conference is represented with 1 automatic qualifier. And then from there, you go at large bids. That's what I think is best for college football, because at that point, then it's just about, hey, go out and win your games, right? Go out and compete. Go out and like, hey, if you win your conference, you're automatically in.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that is what is good for college football. But the idea that we want to be like, hey, these 2 get this many, then the Big 12 and the ACC get 2, like, it just feels too scripted and too structured to me.
I don't have any issue with 14 teams. I don't have any issue with 16 teams. I think a broader reach is great. The issue, I think, becomes that you are only expanding to make more money for the biggest brands in college football. And I think that's a mistake. There is always going to be unintended consequences. And when you are handing the cash to all the biggest programs, I don't see how that's going to end well. And that's exactly what this 14-team expansion is all about. You're going to have 2 years here at 12, 24, 25, 25, 26 for the next 2 years. This will take effect in the 2026 football season. So you're going to get 2 years at 12. I think you should have waited. This feels premature to me. Why not wait, at least go through 1 year at 12 to understand how does that impact fans? How does that impact revenue? How does that impact? Because ultimately, as much as I sit here and tell you fans don't matter, we need to understand, are more viewers coming to a 12-team college football playoff? Is there better TV money? Is there better ad dollars? Is there better, multi-platform reach? Like, we need to understand all this stuff before we just leap into a 14-team expansion, where most of that new money is going to the Big Ten and the SEC, when we have no idea what that new money looks like. You have right now, if you expand to 14 and you give the Big Ten and the SEC 3 spots each, you have no idea what you truly are giving them. You don't know how much money that's going to give them. You have no idea how that's going to impact TV viewership. And I think people just automatically assume, well, Monty, it's the Big Ten and the SEC. More people will watch. I don't think that's the case at all. I think you are alienating the garden variety college football fan.
Well, and I think if you consider the fact that if it's, let's say it's like somehow, some way, one of the 3 AQs out of the Big Ten is Rutgers. Not that that's going to happen, but let's just say it was some, mid-level brand that didn't have a huge following that somehow just popped off for a great year. Is that really going to draw the heat that that, Oregon and Georgia is going to draw, let's say, or whatever the case might be. And that's what I think the maybe the unintended consequences of this could potentially be, because I have to think at some point you're going to have brands get into this thing on the AQs where we're not so big on those certain brands. I mean, if Ole Miss ever decides to get over the hump, let's say, and get into the college football playoff, is Ole Miss and Penn State really one where you're like, man, that's a barn burner?
I think that could happen no matter what. But what I think is a greater risk here is that every single year it is Ohio State and Georgia. I think that's the far more likely outcome, that because all you're doing is galvanizing these top programs. All you're doing is pushing down the G5. All you're doing is telling the Boise States, telling the Fresno States, telling the small school, we don't want you here. We're going to give you one slot. And, well, listen, man, you look at this, there's going to be, the three other spots that you can qualify for. No chance in the world. Those three bids to the remaining highest ranking teams, who do you think are going to get those? Well, Notre Dame's getting one of them. So now there's only 2 spots left. Who do you think is going to get those? Do you really think Fresno State is going to get those?
No.
That's not going to happen. I think you're looking at influencing the AP, which is already, I think, a complete fraud. I think the AP poll is a complete joke. I think you are looking at a situation where we haven't even touched controversy in the history of the college football playoff with how this is setting up. And again, why are you making a policy decision for something that's not going to happen for several years?
Right.
That's the biggest part of this. Go through the 12-team playoff the next year or two, and then make a decision on if you want to expand and how those AQs are going to happen.
Well, and I think that the other thing here is, like, you're taking the emphasis off winning your conference, right? Like having multiple AQs out of each conference. You're basically saying, okay, now you just got to be a top 3 team in your conference, right? Now you just got to be one of the 3 highest teams in your conference. And I think that's the other part of this I don't love, because remember what everyone said in the Florida State situation. Oh, well, it should just be all about what happens between the white lines, and winning is all that matters. But apparently now winning is not all that matters, because we're taking the emphasis off winning the conference.
And my question is, if we are, because I told you last week, we had heard that 16 was something that was being talked about. But now I think most people in college football outside of the Big Ten and the SEC don't want 16, because if you go to 16, what do you think is going to happen? Well, the Big Ten and the SEC are going to get 4 auto bids. That's the only common sense. Do you really think the Big Ten and the SEC are going to want to expand to 16 if they don't get anything out of that? No, they're not going to do that. And I just think this is where the flaws begin.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the flaws begin, because it's no longer about like the spin is, this is all about what you do on the field. It's not. It's all about what the Big Ten and the SEC do on the field. And it's all about, to a much lesser extent, what the Big 12 does on the field. That's all this is.
100%.
And if you're in the ACC right now, how pissed are you? Because you're only going to get an automatic bid for Clemson and Florida State, and maybe not Clemson anymore. Maybe not Clemson anymore, because I don't know what good old NIL program guy is thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think this is so constricting to 99% of college football fans.
And to me, when I first saw it, I just felt like, man, this like kind of goes against the spirit of like what college football is about. Like college football, and I know we're getting away from, the good old days in college athletics, and there's a lot of things changing, and like I totally get all that. But like I feel like it really, like, one of my favorite things about the OG college football playoff, just the 4-teamer, was that there was a lot of drama. There was like, hey, we didn't get in because of this or because of that, or and you've got, people going on ESPN describing why the committee didn't put you in. Like, that's part of what made the 4-team playoff so good. So to me, in an expanded format, I don't know why we thought it would be a good idea to go away from single AQs other than, hey, you just wanted to make more money, because that's all it is. It's just, hey, we want to make more money. It's not like, hey, spirit of competition. Hey, let's let the committee decide, you know, hey, go out and win all your games and let's see if you still don't get in type thing. Like, that's what I really struggle with in this expanded format. Because I agree, we're going to wind up having the same thing we've had for how long, which is Ohio State and someone from the SEC, or Oregon and someone from the SEC. So for me, I don't love this. And I think if I'm a G5, like, you're obviously still pretty salty about this, because you still just have one opportunity.
Oh, I think that's exactly right. I think the G5 in this scenario is taking a beating. I mean, and listen, I'm a Notre Dame fan, and I don't think there's any doubt if Notre Dame's ranked in the top 14, they're getting in. So you have 2 spots. And again, I'm just telling you, you look at Ward Manuel sitting on top of the College Football Playoff Committee. The Big Ten is in control because they have the money. They have the chairman. Like, this to me sets up for the Big Ten and the SEC to get, you know, 4 or 5 teams each in. And I think it is a very bad way to do business.
Yeah.
It is, I think you're going to have big TV audiences. I don't think there's any doubt about that. That does not mean the game of college football will expand. That does not mean the financial windfall will expand. I think for truly the game of college football to grow and prosper, you need access for the G5. I think it is the only way, because I just look at the bottom feeders in expansion. The bottom half of the Big Ten does not have access to the college football playoff. The bottom half of the SEC, Vanderbilt's never going to the college football playoff, and nor should they. But the bottom half of the SEC does not have access to the college football playoff.
Right.
This truly is a ticket for the Blue Bloods, for the Michigan, the Ohio State, the USC, and the Oregon, to make sure every single year that they are in the college football playoff. And if they are not, it's because they are not good enough on the field. Okay, I get that. But you look at what's going on in the ACC. The ACC, it's going to be Florida State as long as they're there. Because, again, I heard yesterday that they're talking about buyouts and they're trying to raise the capital to buy themselves out of the ACC. And they're struggling to do that in Tallahassee. So that may not be the easiest route that everybody thought it would be. But if it's Florida State and they're still in the ACC, it's going to be Florida State and somebody. And I don't believe that it's Clemson as a rubber stamp anymore, but let's say it's Clemson and Florida State. Who else in that conference is even getting a sniff?
Yeah.
I don't know. If you're the Big 12, who in the Big 12, if you only get 2 spots?
Well, it should be Utah and somebody else.
I would assume. But are you telling me that of the 2 remaining at-large bids, that we should believe TCU, that we should believe Texas Tech is going to get in every year? Is Texas Tech a top 14 college football program every single year? They're not. They're not. BYU is going to have an incredibly difficult time getting into the college football playoff. Because now the other part of this is recruiting.
Yeah.
Do you really think that Jimmy, the All-American in the G5, do you really think that he's going to go to a bottom half SEC team? I think the low water mark is Lane Train in the SIP.
Yeah.
Why you're not going to? Are you going to Mississippi State?
Well, no, and I think the other thing that
you're not going to Mississippi State,
dude. If you think about your point about recruiting, and then what have we been hearing about scheduling wise out of these conferences? Hey, we're going to play more conference games.
9 games in the SEC.
We're going to play 9 in the SEC. So why does that matter? Well, that matters because, again, the token Appalachian State versus an SEC team game.
Appy State, please.
Appy State game is
going to
away.
the big house and beating Michigan.
Right.
I think those pay games are in trouble.
Yeah,
I think you're going to see far fewer of those. Hey, here's $5 million bucks. Come play Texas.
Because again, if you're in the SEC or the Big Ten or any of the Power 4 conferences, you have to have a super strong schedule. So you have to be able to say, dude, we got our 9 conference game, which are obviously all power 4 games, of course. But then, hey, what is your non-con schedule looking like? And were those power conference games? So can you get on your schedule, the Notre Dames, can we get a quality Big 12 opponent on our schedule? Like,
I wonder, and I said this the other week, and I think people blew me off, but I wonder if part of this 14-team thing is if you say, okay, well, we'll give you guys each 3 teams, but you're not allowed to get an at-large bid. Are you telling me that we talked about that the other day or the other week, I guess now. It all runs together at this point. But I think that there's no way the Big Ten and the SEC are going to allow that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be, that's a fair trade, but I agree. They're never going to let that
happen.
They're
not
going to let that happen. I mean,
no chance.
Again, their whole mission, like, again, in the SEC, your whole mission is to get 5 teams in. You're saying, okay, we get 3 AQs. Who are the other 2 that we can get in to control this thing?
Does this feel good as a college football fan?
No, I think it feels like this is the first step to 2 super conferences, and we're just trying to be cute about it. That's what this feels like.
I think this does a couple of things. I think if you're going to expand, and if we're going to have the ACC meltdown, let's say.
Yeah.
I think you're going to start to see 20, 22, 24 team conferences. I think you're going to see that you're just going to write off Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, Virginia. You're not getting into the college football playoff.
No.
And maybe you just have this one-off where you go crazy and one-off Virginia wins the ACC somehow. Well, right. The ACC melted down and they got into the SEC. They're dead. Forget it. If you put Virginia in the SEC, how are they any different than Texas would pound
Virginia. Yeah, that wouldn't even be a conversation.
Texas A&M would pound Virginia.
Well, but I think Virginia's a great example, though, like, too, when we talk about, like, alignment and what conference you're in and, like, the bigger picture setup. Virginia is obviously a really good basketball brand, right? They are a tournament team on the regular. Like, so I think that's where my mind is at with this. Like, I'm not just simply thinking about, okay, well, automatic qualifiers and, okay, cool, different format. I'm thinking about, okay, well, how does this impact scheduling? How is this going to impact the future of less the Big 12, but much more the ACC? Because I feel like we've been talking about the Big 12 being in a really, really strong position to kind of follow the Big 10 and the SEC.
And I think they are.
And in that way, they're going to survive for quite some time because they're going to play nice in the sandbox. But the ACC, really to no fault of their own at a conference level, feels like a conference that is just going downhill, not even just a Florida State thing. Like, you're not good in football, man. Like, Florida State's really the only one that's even in the conversation. And I can make a strong case that they have no business being on the same football field as Georgia or Alabama or really any of the heavy hitters in college football, that they're still a second cut below the like Michigan last year or Ohio State or hell, even Oregon. I'd love to see Oregon versus Florida State because I think Oregon would mash them, but that's just my opinion. So my point just is that if the Big 12 is going to be this play nice in the sandbox conference and follow along with the Big 10 and the SEC, what of the ACC when it eventually breaks up? Because I do think that that's an eventuality, but I don't know that happens soon. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about, hey, everyone wants to talk about Notre Dame and the ACC and what's Notre Dame going to do. Notre Dame's going to be just fine because Notre Dame is an asset to all of the big boys in college football because, again, you're going to play 9 conference games and you're going to put Notre Dame on the schedule for a 10th Power 4 game, and you're going to be in a really strong spot. So I don't even care about where Notre Dame's going because they're going to be fine. I mean, to your point, dude, if they're top 14, they're in. It's a rubber stamp, dude.
And so I go back to this idea that, the at-large bids, that's where we, that helps the G5. No, it doesn't. I'm telling you, they're nothing that the College Football Playoff Committee is doing, ultimately, every decision that's been made, whether it's expanding to 14, whether it is TV deals, you name it. What move has the College Football Playoff Committee made to solidify the G5's access to a national championship?
I don't think there's been a single one, man.
To codify their access to a national championship. Nothing. Not a single one.
Yeah, it almost feels like the Cinderella stuff is reserved for the basketball tournament.
The Cinderella, you know what the Cinderella stuff is? It's this cute little dream that's out in the ethos. And oh man, the G5 right here in my heart. Not in the college football playoff, but right here in my heart. Fuck them. They're not taking my spot. No. We got to get the SIP lane train. Yeah, I mean, we have got to. We have got to find a way to make sure that Pedo State gets in every year. I mean, the G5 is right here in my heart.
Excellent strategy, sir.
And their money's in my pocket. That's what this is.
Yeah.
This is playing on the dream. I want Boise State. Statue of Liberty. Get on a knee and propose to Yahoo. Those days are dead. Anybody want to guess why the BCS went away? Anybody want to guess why they're expanding the college football playoff? Why did we originally go to 12? Why are we going to 14? Why are we eventually probably going to be at 20? Well, because the Blue Bloods are going to make more money. Oh, but Monty, that's going to be good for the G. It's nothing that they do is good for the G5. And listen, maybe I am just jaded old fat Mormon Monty. You know, I was supposed to be dead when I was 50. Too late. Sorry to disappoint you, sir. I don't believe that they're trying to protect the G5.
No, they have no incentive. Again, every step you're taking right now is another step in the direction of a tiered college football playoff system. Because I agree, they're going to keep expanding and keep expanding. And maybe, I don't know, just a thought, maybe the God tier is developed unofficially through the college football playoff. Ever think of that? Hey, maybe we don't even need to create a God tier. We're already in control. We're already pushing the narrative forward. So if in 2026 or sooner, whatever, we get to 16 teams, we get to 18, 20, you know, we get fully expanded. There's 6 SEC, 6 Big Ten, and then another 2 that get in for the at-large bids. You're already playing God tier football, man. There's no stopping them. Who's going to do anything about it?
Which is, again, why I tell you when you hear all this nonsense about, oh, North Carolina's going to the Big 12, Monty. They're not. So let me get this right. And this is where basketball comes in. Because I think 2 things are going to matter over the next 2 years. You better have people watching your football games.
Mm-hmm.
Your TV ratings had better be
gas
to the moon, Alice. Right? You had better, because there's no more. We saw what happened to those idiots in the Pac-12. Like we saw George Kliavkoff over there make just an absolute mockery of that. I think one of the worst administrations we've ever seen, and we've seen some bad ones in college sports, right? You look at what happened to the Pac-12, and you don't think that can happen again? I think it can very much happen again.
I think it will happen again.
And I think if you don't understand the importance of putting eyes on your TV screen, and what Jake always says, you better win football games. You better prioritize winning football games, because how lucky, and the word is lucky, how lucky is UCLA to have gotten into the Big Ten?
Very.
Because is there any reason that shouldn't have been Calford UCLA over there in the old ACC?
Or for that matter, with all due respect to UCLA, they could be on the outside looking in. I mean,
the Pac-3.
Yeah.
Are you serious right now?
There with no affiliation.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that is the ultimate gravy train right now, because you had better put people on TV. And I think the model program in this situation is Utah. Oh, Monty, you're just a Ute homer. Whatever you want to say. Why is Utah in the Big 12? They win games. Why is Utah in the Big 12? people travel to their games. They buy tickets, hot dogs, corn dogs, and beer. Why is Utah in the Big 12? Because people watch them on TV. They play in big games. They win big games. They beat big opponents.
Brett Yormark wants to move west.
I'm telling you, you can make that. You can look up and down. And for my BYU friends, and what's really scary, and we'll talk to Jake Retzloff about this an hour from now. What's really scary is I think it is you have no room for error. If you are Houston football, you have no room for error. If you are Cincinnati, if you are UCF, if you are BYU.
But I think a lot of these teams, a lot of these programs are playing a role. Like I would love to sit here and tell you that BYU has a chance to get in the college football playoff anytime soon. But to do that, you're going to have to go undefeated and do it in dominant fashion, just the way they do it in the SEC. So most years, the higher percentage, whether it's BYU or Texas Tech or anybody else, it's not unique to BYU. It's any of these schools that are not the top dog SEC Big Ten team. You're playing a role. UCLA. The only reason UCLA has value and the only reason that they were truly at the end of the day able to get into the Big Ten on the tails of USC is because UCLA is a power program on paper that checks a box on your schedule. And you could say, hey, yeah, man, in week 6, like we dropped 50 on UCLA. And people will say, oh, well, man, you were never going to lose to UCLA, but putting 50 on UCLA is pretty good. That's pretty solid, right? Like that's the role that these programs play. And I hate saying that because it paints the kids in a light of, hey, they're just out here playing football games so they can get beat up on. But I feel like that's what it is now. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about giving the big boys all this extra access. And it is a lot of extra access, right? 2 more spots a year that are automatically chiseled out for you. That's way more access. Whether you were going to get those at large or not is a different conversation. I'm just saying, man, like I'm telling you, dude, we're heading towards God tier, 3-tiered football, and it doesn't have to be official. It's how they operate. It's very much a, hey, this is how we do business type thing, man.
And I'll go back again and say, if you're on the line, and if you're BYU, if you are UCF, if you are Houston, if you are any of the lesser teams in any of these conferences, not the Big Ten and the SEC, and let's say that somehow Vandy wins 10 games and BYU wins 10 games, I would think BYU gets in over Vandy. Okay, great. If Mississippi State wins 10 games and BYU wins 10 games and there's one spot in the college football playoff, who's getting in? You think the committee's taking BYU over Texas A&M? You think the committee's taking BYU over Pedo State? Over Michigan State? What about a Purdue? If Purdue somehow is 10-11 win Purdue, they're getting in. They're getting in. And these seats on the college football playoff committee, people don't take them seriously. You should take them seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolute. Ward Manuel, one of the worst athletic directors, in my opinion, in this country right now, is sitting on top of the college football playoff committee. You think that's any good for the Big Ten? It's wild to me. So if you're average university and you are not known as a traditional powerhouse, and there's no way to make the argument. If you're Arizona State, are you getting in over Penn State?
No.
There's not a chance in the world.
Today would be shitty.
Are you telling me that Arizona is getting in over Michigan State if they're both equal? They're not.
Colorado.
But that's different. See, and I think that's different because I think that's where the prime effect comes in.
Mm-hmm.
If Colorado and Michigan State, if Colorado and Pedo State, if Colorado and Mississippi State are on the line and they're even, I think Deion Sanders has a chance to get that nod.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe Deion will get the nod there.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that you have to give credit where credit's due, not just to Deion, but I think to Colorado and the leadership there for having vision, right? You understood, like I remember, and I'm sure you guys remember, when Colorado did the whole thing where they left Pac-12 Media Day early and they didn't really do any interviews and they kind of sent a message and, and then they left. There was a lot of criticism for that.
A lot.
Like, what are you doing, man? You betrayed us. Like, what the hell? Like that was kind of the sentiment. And now how's it worked out for him? And I'm telling you, and I know, and I'm not really interested in people saying that Dion sucks or he's terrible. What I'm here to tell you is it doesn't matter what you think of Dion, that program's moving forward. And all Dion has to do, and all programs like Colorado at that level have to do, is just go out and be a 10-win football team. That's what you have to do. That's the ask. That's what you have to achieve to be in the conversation.
It makes you curious. It makes you curious. Are Texas and Oklahoma in a better place in the SEC than they were in the Big 12?
I think Oklahoma's not. I think Texas is.
It's a very interesting conundrum.
I think that Oklahoma losing Dylan Gabriel is a different program. And we don't know what that looks like. You could be a bottom feeder. You could be a top feeder. I don't know what you look like right now. So potentially, but I think right now where we sit right here in this moment on the show, yeah, it's better for Texas because I have no doubt Texas can hang with the big boys in the SEC to a large enough extent to get in on an automatic qualifier.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting time in college football, and I am not convinced that this setup is good for, TCU. Is TCU traditionally going to get into a 14-team playoff?
Not traditionally. They've shown the ability, but not traditionally.
Occasionally they can get in.
Yeah.
I think that's very true.
I also think the seeding portion of this is important too. If you think about that, like, okay, cool. You're getting automatic qualifiers, but just because you were the third AQ in the Big Ten doesn't mean you got the third spot in the college football playoff. Like, that's what I think the playoff and the ESPN side of this conversation really finds attractive about this. Hey, if we can guarantee we got 6 teams from these 2 conferences, look at the matchmaking we can do. Look at how we can say, okay, well, hey, maybe like this past year's Alabama situation. Alabama loses to Texas early in the season. They come back, They find their way. Okay, well, what's an early round college football playoff matchup that we can give Alabama that's really compelling? Because we want to stoke the fire of the Alabama hater, and we want the Alabama supporter to say, I told you so when they win that ball game.
I agree. Prize Picks, the daily fantasy partner of the Monty Show. Damn it, Caitlin Clark, you did me dirty. You did me dirty last night. 50.5 was the over-under. She put up 55.
Damn.
Unbelievable performance out of Caitlin Clark, who is now unquestionably the all-time leading scorer by any measure in women's college basketball. Congratulations to Caitlin Clark. I love Prize Picks. I am so stoked baseball's back. Major League Baseball on Prize Picks, combined with, we're going to get about 4 months of Major League Baseball and NBA on Prize Picks. And it is, I'm telling you, golf is interesting as well. The Cognizant.
Yeah.
The old Honda Classic tees off today. But I love daily fantasy. And on Prize Picks, they make it so easy because all you have to do is pick more or less. How about LeBron James, who we're going to talk about coming up here in 20 minutes? LeBron last night scoring 19 points.
Torching
in the fourth quarter in the final Clipper-Laker game as co-tenants at Crypto.com Arena. Was an amazing performance last night out of LeBron. I didn't pick him because I'm dumb. But the best thing about daily fantasy tomorrow, which is today, is a brand new day.
It's a new day, baby.
That's right. PrizePicks.com. Download the PrizePicks app. Use the promo code Monty, M-O-N-T-Y, Monty, to get 100% deposit matching up to $100. And trust me when I say deposit $10, you can play for a month because they'll give you $10 more. You put in 10, you get 20. You put in 20, you get 40, 50, and 100. It's that simple at prizepicks.com. Use the promo code Monty to get 100% deposit matching. Now we're only, 10 minutes away now.
Yeah. Donnie watch.
The Donnie dump.
Yes.
These hackers that hacked the website of the government in Georgia, the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
And were able to gain access to Donald Trump's legal documents.
Mm-hmm.
And they claim they have documents and evidence that is a game changer for the election.
What is this, Jason Bourne?
They were holding that information hostage. The state of Georgia refused to negotiate. And all of a sudden, they said, okay, well, at 8:49 Eastern on February 29th, Leap Day, we're going to release the documents unless you pay up. Nobody paid up. So we're just 9 minutes away now.
Let's go.
9 minutes away.
Release the documents, sir.
I'm not somebody that believes that hackers generally tell the truth. I think they have the documents. I don't think they're game changers for the election, but we'll find out in 9 minutes, right? Pete Forte for $5 says the availability of more at-large bids helps G5 recruiting. Well, the dream that was Rome, right? Like the dream that was Rome. That's not anything more than a pipe dream, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I look at the G5, Pete, and I say to myself, that's cool. You can sell that. Go get your 3-star quarterback at North Dakota State.
Well, and look, Pete's a San Diego State guy. So, like,
well,
San Diego State's, again,
you're a basketball school.
You're a basketball school, and you have no business talking about the college football playoff, with all due respect, man.
Yeah, and it's a bummer because you should have got the pro rata you deserved, right? I mean,
see, I was trying to avoid it. I was trying to avoid it and be nice, but you're right. You're right. You're right. By the way,
man, that was a disaster.
Where are all the hard asses at San Diego State's administrative office? Haven't heard from you in a while.
Which is good. Which is good. I listen, San Diego State
I'm not
fan.
Sure for them it is, dude. The narrative about San Diego State is you made a fool about yourself in the Pac-12 situation. You got into the tournament. You did great things last year. And now all of a sudden you're just very quiet. There's nothing happening.
San Diego State fan deserves an administration that doesn't talk.
Agreed.
This current administration, because San Diego State fan's amazing. I know a ton of people that are Wales Regina supporters, and I'm telling you now, San Diego State fan deserves better.
Mm-hmm.
That's why that magical run of the Final Four last year was amazing. And you need to do it again, because I think the G5, I think it's very limiting. This 14-team playoff is very limiting to brands like San Diego State. Pete also gives us 10 Monty Show memberships.
Okay.
Way to go, Pete. Appreciate you very much. Thank you very much. Let's see. Good morning, crew, Mad Cat says.
Suh, dude.
Noel Ramirez, I think Oklahoma doesn't leave if the format existed back then. I think it's very interesting. I think it's a very interesting conundrum. I think you're right. Texas will compete at the top of any conference they're in, God tier or not.
Yeah.
I think you are missing Lincoln. I think you are missing Bob Stoops. You're missing what Oklahoma used to be. And Brett Venables has to get that together. And I think he was much better last year. But when you're doing it through the portal, it makes it more difficult. Now, being in the SEC should help you rebuild the program.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a very long road for this incarnation of Sooner Nation to get to the college football playoff. I think it's very difficult. It is shocking that a quarterback would transfer to Oregon out of Oklahoma. I still think that is a huge, huge question in my mind. Huge question. Mike Smith, Utah married lot lizard leader from the truck stop conference. Hey, man, better to be married than single, isn't it, Jake?
Yeah.
Big Daddy Magic. Hey, playa, Utah should hire Cindy Crawford, B-Team Goodwill ambassador. Cindy Crawford's hot.
Big Daddy Magic, the heavyset one with the big gun with the sweet tongue.
Hey, man, she's almost 60 years old, and she is still a smoke show. Eric Wasikowski, truck stop conference got UNC confused with NC State. UNC would never lower themselves to that conference. Well, I don't think there is a lower themselves to that conference. And you're a fan of Michigan, and you're talking about lowering yourself.
Come on, guy.
You're already that, like, maybe you need a day off, dude. Mike Smith, UNC trying to put it out there that UNC and NC State are a package deal. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think NC State voted separately from UNC with ACC expansion. And I think, at least we were told back then, and if you go back on the channel and watch, like, that caused a significant fracture in the relationship between Carolina and Carolina State.
Yeah.
And I think NC State really damaged themselves. And I think that North Carolina aligned themselves with Florida State, who I think very much they're I don't know how much influence Florida State has anymore. I don't. It seems like this conversation comes up more often than it probably should, because you would think Florida State's, oh, they're a blue blood. I don't know that they are.
Yeah.
I don't know that they are. And they've gone absolutely nowhere. And now they're locked in a really expensive court fight with the ACC.
Yeah, I think they were the new kid on the block in terms of winning in the modern day. And they tried to be a bully, and that didn't really work out for them. So now they're sitting here with their hands tied and not much to do about it.
And I think that North Carolina is going to have its pick, because the SEC very clearly, I don't think Greg Sankey's made it a question. They would add North Carolina today if they could. The problem is, I think North Carolina wants a Big Ten because I think they know they're a better fit in that conference.
Yeah.
And I think they want academic alignment because, and I know everybody loses your shit when I say this, but academics still matter at North Carolina. They care very much. And again, talking about Michigan, this is the big conundrum at Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the academias at Michigan feel like they sold out their ethics and morals for Jim Harbaugh. And I think it is a significant issue in Ann Arbor. And I think it's one that North Carolina is not going to play with. North Carolina, if North Carolina and that group in Chapel Hill is anything, they are very self-aware. They know that athletically, they are not on par with their academics, and the academics will always be number one. It's the same thing with Duke. And I do think, and this was another argument we had last fall, I do think Duke and Carolina are a package deal. And I think they would both end up in the Big Ten. If they had their druthers and they had their ways, North Carolina and Duke could go to the Big Ten, because I think they know that continues to give them a really good pathway to the top of the college basketball world. And the money's better and the football's better. And I think North Carolina wants to win football games.
Yeah.
I don't think Duke cares if they ever win another football game. They don't. I think they want to put out doctors, and I think what is Duke? A house of learned doctors. I think they want to put out doctors, and I think they want to put out basketball players. Yeah. And to do that, I think you need to join the Big Ten. And I think they will. I think they will. If they could, they would. Bryce Martin, good to see you, my friend. So it's not if the Big 12 will lose teams, but when and who will go. I think it's a very interesting question.
Yeah, but I think the Big 12 is more secure than the ACC. I think the Big 12 is in a position where they
I would agree with that.
Yeah, so I mean, I just don't understand why we're trying to characterize the Big 12 as a conference.
60 seconds to Donnie dump.
Yeah, so real quick before Donnie takes a dump, I don't know why we're trying to characterize the Big 12 as this conference that's about to lose teams. Texas and Oklahoma, to me, were a one-off situation because they were such big brands that they no longer were a fit in the Big 12. But everybody else in the Big 12 is a good fit. Like, again, Tortilla Land needs to learn how to win more football games under Joey, dude. Like at some point, UCF and Houston and these newer programs in the conference need to raise their level, and if that happens, the Big 12 will be fine. I'm really not that worried about them right now.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how all that shakes out. I don't view the Big 12 as vulnerable, because I think, and people got, again, offended when I said this, who are the best teams in the Big 12? Who is the best athletic program in the Big 12? It's Utah. And I don't think it's arguable. And you don't have to like Utah, but you have to respect them. In totality, the Utah athletic department is superior to the way they're administered, the way that they handle their finances, the way they are supported. They're superior. Facilities-wise, I would love to see an upgrade. But Rice Eccles is amazing. Their indoor practice facility is pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, their new football center is amazing. Huntsman Center needs some work, but here nor there. You're not going to the SEC at Utah. Utah's not going to the Big Ten.
No.
I think you look at the best teams in the Big 12. Iowa State's got to be included in that. Iowa State's not going to the Big Ten.
No.
K-State. I think K-State. I think Kansas, certainly with what they're doing at Memorial Stadium. And I think certainly with what they're doing in football and in basketball, they're not going to the Big Ten. Is Kansas going to the SEC? That doesn't feel like a fit.
No.
There's just not a whole lot. Is Texas Tech going to the SEC? They're not. Who's going to approve that vote?
Nobody.
The Big 12, I think, is solid in the brands that they currently have. Could that change if the ACC falls apart? Okay, sure. I could see that changing. But it is ultimately about desirability. And if you look at top to bottom, the Big 12, there's not a whole lot that needs to be changed. There's not a whole lot of demand for the brands.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in college basketball, okay, we can have a different conversation. Top to bottom, that's the best league in the country. But football is what we're talking. Football is the revenue generator here.
Yes.
So I think the Big 12 is in a very interesting position. I think they're pretty solid. If you're the ACC, I think the SEC would love to have Florida State and Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the Big 10 would love to have Carolina and Duke. I do think that there is some demand in the Big 12 to add better basketball programs, but Carolina and Duke aren't going to the Big 12.
Hell no. That ain't a fit.
Right? So now you got to start looking at, okay, well, in the ACC, if we're talking about men's basketball, right? Let's focus on men's basketball. I mean, you're looking at a league that essentially is solid, and you're probably going to have, 6, 7, 20-win teams in the ACC this year. But is the Big 12 beating down Syracuse's door? They're not. I still maintain one of the more interesting targets for the Big 12 is Pitt, because you have a natural rival in West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And Pitt is putting together a much better group of talent in basketball. Pitt makes some sense there. Does Wake Forest make sense for the Big 12? It does not. In my opinion, it does not. Does Virginia? I think Virginia is a very desirable basketball brand. That is a 25-win team just about every single year. Does that make sense for the Big 12? I think it does.
This makes sense for Virginia, though. That's
another question
for them.
That is another question. But you look top to bottom, Louisville's a terrible basketball program right now. They may not win 10 games not in conference. They may not win 10 games the entire season. Louisville's a very interesting, and we talk about TVs, and because I maintain, and you guys probably think I'm an idiot, as most of you already do. I maintain this year you better win games the next 2 years, and you better bring people to the TV set the next 2 years. Because I think you're going to have to print out your resume, Jimmy, and you're going to have to go sit at the college football playoff table and make a case for yourself.
Yes.
And you better be able to say, well, look at how many viewers I have. And look at your mom. And look at your cousin. They were watching our games too.
And look at all the portal acquisitions. Look at this. Look at that.
You better. And I don't think it's a slam dunk by any stretch of the imagination.
Nope.
I truly do not.
Not even a little bit.
I think it is going to be very interesting to see how all that plays out. Jake Retzloff in 35 minutes. Christopher Shannon says UCLA needs its own 50,000 seat stadium. They have to get out of the Rose Bowl, and they never will. Because, again, this dream. Do you know how bad it is when you make your emotions fight reality? Oh, UCLA, we are the Rose Bowl. Tradition, pageantry. One afternoon in January. Never from September to December. Right? Like,
yeah.
Very rarely is that place. The problem is the Rose Bowl is so big and you're so shitty, Chip Kelly, that nobody showed up to watch your games. So that place looked like a bunch of humans dressed as empty chairs. And it's embarrassing.
It is.
It is embarrassing.
No doubt about it, dude.
Danny Salazar, I think of Europe, college football relegation again. Okay, so if you're the Big Ten, are you going to vote for relegation?
No.
So Michigan, who's going to get drilled by the NCAA, they only win 3 games next year, let's say, or they have a terrible year. Are you really going to relegate Michigan? Somehow I don't see that happening. That, in my opinion, is the single reason relegation never happens.
Uh-huh.
Because you're bound to have a down year. It's going to happen.